To Tasmania now, where scientists have taken a difficult decision to remove a critically endangered fish population from its habitat ahead of a predicted marine heatwave. The red handfish faces a number of threats, and it's believed fewer than 100 of them remain in the wild, prompting the federal government to authorise this emergency intervention. Well, joining us now is Jemina Stewart-Smith from the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies. Dr. Stewart-Smith, thank you for joining us. This is a big decision. What has led to it?
That's right, it was a really big decision, and so I guess we had our eye on the predicted marine and atmospheric heat wave that we thought was going to occur in southeastern Australia, and we know that the red handfish populations are really fragile, so there are a few animals left and the habitat that they exist in is really quite small and fragmented. So I guess we viewed the additional heat wave as a further threat, a possible, that would have a really negative impact on the population.
Yeah, indeed, if there are less than 100 in the wild, which is what is believed, that's not many. Can we take it back a bit? What were the efforts to date to increase these numbers?
So we've been working with red handfish for about 5 years now, and initially, we had we did surveys of the wild population to try and estimate how many were left in the wild, but we've also started what's known as a head starting strategy. That's where we collect eggs from the wild, hatch them and grow them in captivity and try to release them back into the wild to try and bolster the wild population numbers. And on top of that, we're also at the same time trying to restore their habitat. And one of the key drivers of their habitat loss is overgrazing by a native urchin species.
So Tassie is very important to them. Whereabouts are you releasing them?
So there's only 2 known populations, and they're in Frederick Henry Bay, which is close to Hobart.
Have the efforts to date worked? Of course, you've taken them out because of this heatwave coming, but aside from that, has this effort been working?
We've made really good progress so far in terms of improving what we know about the husbandry and the aquaculture side of it, so we have really good survival in captivity. We've only done 1 release so far with mixed sort of results, so that was back in 2020, and we know that animals survived, took 7 or 8 months, but we're still monitoring those populations.
And you touched on this a moment ago, but what are the threats for them?
The key threats are really habitat loss, so they're now found in these tiny little areas, little pockets of seaweed and seagrass, and there are other threats as well because the populations are really close to urban areas, so then you have things like pollution and runoff and disturbance from boats that all, I guess, combine to act on the population.
So this is an emergency intervention that's been authorised by the federal government. What happens from here?
From here, we continue to monitor the wild population and the habitat, and then we meet again to discuss the next steps. And the initial idea is to put the fish back prior to winter, but obviously we have to make sure that everything's in place before that happens. So we'll be continuing to monitor the temperature, the habitat and the population itself.
And are any other locations being considered?
In the long term, definitely, we're looking at translocation to other sites, but for now, we don't have any suitable known sites established yet, so we'll be returning them to the sites that we took them from.
So, a bit of emergency efforts at the moment. There are low numbers. Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. I know that, we've got a really big team of experts working on this, and yeah, I guess I'm optimistic because we're trying to do a whole bunch of things at the same time. We're trying to recover the population, and we've made grounds in trying to restore the habitat.